Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa afdalu salati wa atammu taslimi ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan bil lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad fil awwaleen. Wa salli wa sallim ala Sayyidina Muhammad fil akhirin. وصلي وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصلي وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها وأنت خير الوارثين. Alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our session today entitled In Conversation with Shaykh Siddiq Mitha. So inshallah, the format for tonight, inshallah, we are going to have a kind of a discussion, informal discussion with Sheikh Siddiq. So talking a little bit about his background, about his journey studying sacred knowledge and the pursuit that he took, leaving the UK, going abroad, bit about his interest in Hanafi fiqh, and then also a course that he's going to be teaching very soon online, which we can all benefit from, inshallah ta'ala. So, a bit of a background to Sheikh Siddiq. Obviously, Sheikh Siddiq is based in Bolton, northwest of England. He uh, was studied in Liverpool University, completed his medical degree, practiced medicine for a couple of years, and then decided to go abroad and study in Amman in Jordan. He studied with some great luminaries of his time, who are kind of masters in the field of fiqh and language, Arabic, lots of things, mashallah, tabarakallah. And now he's back in Bolton, alhamdulillah, after studying for some time. Um, and benefiting the local community in Bolton and beyond as well. So I'm going to invite Sheikh Siddiq to join, inshallah. Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How you doing,
So
Yusuf?
Sheikh Siddiq is obviously not feeling very well, so I've kind of like pleaded and begged for him to join today. So alhamdulillah, how are you doing, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, just a bit
Excellent.
hay fevered.
Yeah. A lot of people are suffering from the hay fever, isn't it? Okay. So I want to kind of delve right in, Sheikh. So I want to take you back to 2013. Okay.
No,
So actually, before that, I want to just mention a little bit about kind of how I kind of met you and whatnot. So 2010, I was joining Liverpool, going to do a law degree, and I was trying to find who's the president of the Islamic Society, and I've come across a guy called Siddiq Mitha, right? So I
yeah,
sent him an email, didn't get a response for about 3 weeks, which wasn't great. But anyway, he said, when you're here, let me know, and we'll link up. So I get there on a Tuesday in September 2010, dropped him an email, and then he picked me up and. Mashallah, that was the start of a lot of khair for me, alhamdulillah. You got me involved in the ISOC, which was great. I learned so much from, just doing the khidmah of the students and stuff like that. So that was really good. You were very, very important for my Islamic development, alhamdulillah. But
yeah.
let's kind of fast forward a little bit to 2013, right?
No,
So you've obviously graduated from medicine, you're
yeah,
married, everything's great, you've got you're a doctor, got nice healthy income coming in, everything's going good, and then you decide I want to up sticks and go abroad.
yeah.
So why? What happened? What was going on?
Bismillah. I think when you get older, and obviously at university, I was involved in the ISOC quite a bit, and I enjoyed the ISOC experience. I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed attending classes. And I just realized that I loved studying Islam. I think it was the first time in 2006 when I met Sheikh Ibrahim Osiafa, who'd come home from studying in Yemen. I didn't know who this man was. I was like this, coming from Bolton, which is, very heavily subcontinent orientated. I come from like an Indian background. So there's only like a certain way of Islam that I was used to. And so then this Sheikh comes home back to his hometown, Liverpool, and end up one of the brothers takes me to a Maulid at his house, and this is like in 2006. It was a long time ago now.
Mm.
I was just like, what is this like? It's the first time I experienced something, that I could really relate to. And then he started teaching Aqidah, and he taught multiple books over the 5 years. He taught 40 Hadith of Imam Nawawi, and Sheikh. Then there was another Sheikh called Sheikh Harun who also came and taught, and we did lots of books in the ISOC years. And I think just spending time with the Mashaykh and the teachers, and then the Habaib would come down, and Habib Qadim would come every year, and then we invite Sheikh Samir, and there's so many Mashaykh that came. And I think medicine was always like a bit of a side thought for me. It wasn't really my calling, because I've always been interested in Islamic stuff, but I think you never pushed by your family or by the society to actually pursue ilm as ilm, or become, take a scholarly path, because it's not the most financially rewarding path. And I think the subcontinent have this way of looking at careers and this financial stability. And so in many ways Islamic studies ends up becoming a lot like the arts, and the humanities, history, geography, English, Islamic studies, right at the bottom. These careers are not fit for financial freedom and all that type of stuff. So when I left, I did work my foundation years for 2 years in Blackburn, and then I did about 6 months locum work. But after I got married, me and my wife, alhamdulillah, we're both interested in Islamic learning. We just wanted to do something different. I think, at that point, you wanted to experience a bit more of life, and see the Islamic world, and sort of experienced, Muslim life, or living like a Muslim, in an Islamic setting. So I spoke to some people, and, I took that big step to go. I never had the initial intention to stay there for years and years and years. It was initially just to learn Arabic. But when I got there, lo and behold, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the
Um,
lifestyle, enjoyed the culture, enjoyed the people, enjoyed the whole thing. And I met some of the mashayikh, and then when I met them, in particular, there's a certain sheikh, Dr. Salam ul Hajj. When I met him, and he explained to me, you know, what he's studying, and in specific Hanafi fiqh, I was just taken aback by it. And I think I just started studying, and one thing just led to another, and I just said Bismillah, and so just continued from there, really. But I think it was a big step that I took, and even now I do think like, whoa, like that was quite a bigger step that I took. But I think in life you have to be courageous if you want to get anywhere in life, because otherwise you sort of live a life of regret, and I don't think I'm that type of person. No.
yeah, I think one of the things that's a challenge, I've personally found ever since I've kind of finished from university and stuff is, and I think it's really interesting how you say that you've got to really kind of take that big step, because oftentimes when you're so consumed in the world of work and the professional life that a lot of people adopt, it's hard to kind of compartmentalize that, and then family life, and then children, and then spouse, and then you need to put a bit of time in for Islamic studies.
Oh yeah.
um and it's very difficult, I feel, to really dedicate time to Islamic studies part time. I feel like it can be done if you're very, very, very disciplined, but it's a big challenge,
Yeah.
that I think a lot of people struggle with.
No, definitely. I think those sentiments resonate with me as well, because that is how I felt. I felt if I was going to do this and I was going to take it further, then I would have to dedicate some time to it.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how big this thing
Mm.
is. As in,
Yeah.
you sort of thing, yeah, you're studying and you know stuff, and then you actually pursue Islamic studies full time, and you realize, hang on, this is going to take me a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then make the decision like, is this what I want to do?
Yeah.
Or it's not something that I want to do. And I just sort of said, let's just go for it. Do you know what I mean? Let's
Yeah.
just do it. And so alhamdulillah, I made the decision, and I've not looked back since.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Um, One point before we kind of go into the specifics about your studies and stuff, do you think that in the pursuit of trying to uh
Yeah.
benefit societies, particularly in the UK, trying to do Islamic work, trying to do kind of make a positive impact on the community, especially in the UK, do you think it's important that we need to have people who study, put a lot of effort into studies, or do you think that that's not necessarily required? How important is seeking sacred knowledge to, benefiting a community, particularly in the UK?
For Westerners, you mean like Western
Yeah,
Muslims?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's a basic that everyone must learn, and
Mm,
there's no excuse for that. I mean, once you become a Muslim, there are basic things, what we call things that are personally obligatory upon you, me, everyone,
yeah,
that you have to learn. As
yeah.
in, you're sinful for not learning it.
Mm,
Those things are related to purity, prayer, fasting, zakat, if you need to give zakat, hajj, if you're going for hajj, marriage, if you're married or you're planning to get married, etc., etc. There are basic rulings that you have to learn, whether it's fiqh or whether it's about Allah. So there are so many people who hold, you know, weird and wonderful beliefs about Allah, that basically entail, disbelief in a lot of ways. Do you understand? Because they think Allah is what they've been taught in school, or He takes a certain form. No, billah. So there's so many things that which we just call basic, which we've sort of understood as like, oh, this is some crazy Islamic learning. It's not. It's basic learning. So when it comes to Aqidah, there are basic things that you must learn about Allah, the prophets, the angels, the other world. And, it can take you literally looking at about 10, 15 weeks, 10 to 15 hours, one lesson a week. And then the fiqh is a bit bigger and broader. But again, most of everything that we engage in the world, you have to know whether, am I allowed to do this? Am I not allowed to do it?
mm.
Is Allah happy with me? Is Allah not happy with
The
me?
do's and
How-
don'ts,
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
exactly. The rights that people have over me. So how
Mm,
can you be a Muslim if you don't really understand what Allah wants from you or how He wants
mm,
you? And then you have things that relate to spirituality, which a lot of people think that, oh, this is some extra, Sufi goofy stuff that, it's all airy fairy, but no, basic akhlaq, basic character, basic things like being good mannered, not getting angry, not having pride in your heart, not being envious of others. These are basic things people don't realize that they're major
mm,
sins of the heart. And
mm,
therefore, all of these things you have to understand and learn. So every Muslim should have that basic minimum. And a lot of the time, we just spend 80% of the time, I would say, teaching this tabaqah, this sort of like,
level.
level of people, the basic stuff. And there's
Mm,
very few people who are interested in learning more than that. And you
mm,
realize that when you start teaching them more, in the West anyway, not many people are interested. And it's an
mm,
unfortunate thing because of the culture that we've created around Islamic studies and the way we understand erudition and scholarship, especially in subcontinent sort of communities. Tamam?
mm, mm,
But yeah, there's a basic that everyone must learn, but then there's like there is another sort of increased level that is what we call fard kifaya, a communal obligation. So you may not need it, but you learn it so you can teach other people. And some people must do that. Some people must do that, even if it's not obligatory upon themselves because they're not engaged, they don't need to, they're not married, so they don't need to learn about marriage, but they're learning it so they can
mm,
teach other people who are married. And this is a fard kifaya, it's a communal obligation that
mm,
some must upkeep that responsibility. Just like if there were no doctors in an area,
mm.
one must learn medicine so they can treat
Yeah,
the Muslims in that area.
yeah.
So a lot of the things that we do, a lot of people might think, "Oh, why are you learning this? Why are you learning that?" No one's, but it's a fard kifaya, it's an obligation that there are people in your community who, if the community was to fall, in a problem, whether in belief, whether in tasawwuf, whether in fiqh, that there are people there who can answer that. No.
Mm, mm. Alhamdulillah. So, Sheikh, you decide you're gonna basically leave the UK and go abroad and study, and you end up in Amman, Jordan, right? So, obviously, especially at that time, a lot of the kind of um, main luminaries or kind of main kind of areas of study, particularly places like Syria, have
No.
basically become no-go areas, unfortunately, due to the war. Allah Ta'ala, alleviate the pain that the people are going through. So why Jordan? What was it about Jordan?
I had no intention to go to Jordan initially. A lot of the people that I'd studied with in the UK had either been to Yemen, or they'd been
Yeah,
to Syria, or
yeah.
they'd been to Mauritania, or there were people that had been to India and Pakistan. So I
Mm,
wasn't aware of Jordan or any other place, whether it be Lebanon or anywhere as a place of study. It wasn't. But then um, I heard someone who'd been to Jordan, a friend of mine, older than me, and he'd gone there and he'd went there to learn Arabic as a language, and he spent a few months there. And so at that point, I was looking for places to go. So I was looking at Egypt, I was looking at maybe Syria, I was looking at a few different places, and then when Jordan came up in the conversation, so I started looking into Jordan a lot more. I spoke to this brother. He told me there's a really good community there of like sort of Western expat students and
mm,
Muslims there. There's some really good teachers there. So I started looking into it a lot more. And it was a safe country. I just got married, so it seemed very appealing to me.
mm,
Uh, I said, okay, do you know what? I spoke to one of the centers there, the person running the center. Said, look, I'm planning to come. Da, 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 da. He gave me advice. We could do this, we could do that. So I just took the sort of step. I said, okay, do you know what? I'll try it out. Seeing as I can't really go anywhere else because of all the Arab, the
yeah,
revolutionary stuff, and it wasn't safe to go anywhere.
yeah,
Anyway, it felt a lot safer and nicer to go to Jordan, and someone had been and given a lot of sort of good
yeah,
feedback. So I
yeah.
chose to go there, and so when I went there, yeah, it was a lot of learning on the go. Nothing was ever like, oh yeah, I'm here now and everything's set up. It was never
Mm,
ever like, everything was learned. It was a journey. Things were chopped and changed throughout. I met teachers, moved away from teachers, spent time with other teachers. That was how I sort of my journey in Jordan. So that's how I ended up in Jordan. It was
mm,
through the the sort of someone else's experiences that led me
mm.
there. No.
I think one of the things that is probably maybe a big barrier is obviously language. So how did you overcome that? I mean, did you have quite a good command of Arabic before you went, or how did you go about dealing with that?
I had learned a little bit of Arabic, like grammar and things like that. I could understand, like, say if something was spoken in Fusha, I could get probably 70-80% of it before I left. I
Yeah.
couldn't speak it. I could maybe string a couple of words, but I couldn't speak it definitely.
Mm,
Uh, So when I went there, I had to sort of enroll in a language center, and for about 6 months, I just was just doing Arabic language, going through Al Arabiya to Bayna Yadayk and things like that,
mm,
and we were just having language sessions. And yeah, the language is hard. People don't speak
yeah.
in Fusha; they speak in Amiya on the
Yeah.
street. And I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
just like thinking, "Oh my God, this is so hard." It's like I'm
Yeah.
so anything. I'm never gonna learn Arabic. Why is Arabic so hard? And
Yeah.
it was really difficult because you feel like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've made it, and then you just get there and you think, hang on, what is the taxi guy saying? Like because the lingo, the day-to-day lingo that they
Yeah.
use is just so different.
Yeah.
But I think it's all about getting to that tipping point. So you've got
Mm,
to spend your Arabic language learning. For every person, there's a secret. I call it a secret hour. Secret number of hours. Some people
yeah.
it could be 20, 30, 40, 100, 500. There's a tipping point when it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Plus, it clicks. So
Yeah.
just being there, forcing yourself, immersing yourself in that whole atmosphere, culture, learning, asking. You've got to go to the shops. You've got to buy a SIM card. You've got to, speak to the taxi guy. It just
Yeah.
forces you to learn, even though it's bitter. It's a bitter pill, but it sorts you out.
Yeah.
But being there 6 to 8 months, khalas, after that, alhamdulillah, I was okay. But it never
Mm,
finished. Even now, there are things that I'm still learning. So you
mm,
get to the point where you're happy, you're confident enough to be able to communicate, and you're confident enough to understand when people are speaking to you, even though you can't maybe fully express yourself in the
yeah.
most eloquent of ways.
Yeah.
Uh, so it took me around, yeah, so about 6 to 8 months maybe to sort
The
myself.
funny thing that you mentioned about Amia, I went to Morocco a good couple of years ago, and obviously my family don't really speak Arabic, so it was an
Yeah,
opportunity for me to kind of practice my grammar, Fusha only, right?
but you spoke
And
French.
but yeah, so I remember there was a taxi driver there, and he used to drive us around and stuff. So he's talking to me in his Amia, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And I'm trying to speak to him with all the pronouns and all the,
Yeah,
the
I
relative
know.
pronouns. And eventually he gets to a point and he says, "Are you some professor or something? Your language is so good." And I was like, "No, it's just you guys and your colloquial." So,
Subhan.
alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So, eventually kind of got a bit of a grasp of Arabic language, and then tell us a little bit about kind of your studies, because you spent was it almost 9 years that you spent in Jordan?
I spent about I went in November 2013 and I came back in June 2022.
Okay, so
I
just
came
just
back
short of
I
nine
came
years.
back like probably a 6 month periods. So I
Okay.
probably minus a year from that. So yeah,
Yeah.
about 8 years maybe. Yeah.
So what did you kind of focus on when you obviously Arabic is kind of the key, isn't it? What did you then focus on in terms did you enroll onto like a course, or did you take private studies? What did you focus on?
Initially, it was all private studies. So initially,
Okay.
I asked people, who to study with, what to study, and that if you speak to the students, there are people that teach, certain sciences, and you seek those scholars out. So very early on, I sought out Dr. Salam Ul Hajj, and he used
Okay.
to have
Sure.
a center called Anwar Al Ulama, and
Yeah.
it was a bit far from me. It was like a good half an hour away from me. 20 minutes, 30 minutes away from me. And I didn't know him, but I made contact with him. This is very early on. So you're looking at like, um, even while I was studying Arabic, I think maybe, or very
Early
early.
2014 maybe.
Yeah, it was April 2014 it was.
Okay.
So literally after 6 months, I made contact with him. I went to see him in his office, and I spoke to him alongside my wife, and we we just discussed the possibility of studying Hanafi fiqh with him, and he sort of spoke to us and told us everything about Hanafi fiqh and what he teaches and how he teaches and what he does and da da da. And I remember just being like, a bit stupefied and thinking like, oh, like this guy knows what. I'd learned Hanafi fiqh before, I'd done it
Yeah.
madrasa in masjid
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I'd grown up listening to ulama, coming to the masajid. I'd, obviously studied Hanafi fiqh with people that had been to Syria,
Yeah.
and I had never seen anybody speak about it in the way he spoke about it and with
Mm.
so much sort of enthusiasm. So that encouraged me massively because I was
Mashallah.
like, whatever this guy's got, I want a
Y-
piece of that.
Yeah.
That's
Mashallah.
like, yeah. So when I went to see him, and then class, we said, okay, we'll come on these days and we'll start studying with you. And so I remember the first lesson that we had was at like early, it was like at 6 a.m. in the morning after Fajr. And so, we take the taxi, we'd go there, we'd do like, I think maybe an hour or two it was, I can't remember now. And then we'd go home. And so we studied privately with him. And then we continued like that till 2017.
Okay.
Or 2016, something like that. We continued with him for like 2 years, you know, studying with him in that manner. Um, and we studied multiple books with him privately, and we'd have the whole 2 hours to ourselves. We'd ask him
Mashallah.
anything, we'd study
Excellent.
anything,
So that was
and you
like one to
realize,
one with Dr. Salah.
yeah, that Dr. Salah, yeah. So we
Mashallah.
had a lot of hours with him. Like we
Mashallah.
spent a lot of time with him, and we got
Mashallah.
to know him really well, alhamdulillah. And he,
Mashallah.
at that point, once what happens is when you get to know a teacher and you spend time with him, then it's as if your journey now starts developing in a different way, because then they advise you to do this or they advise you to do that. So he became quite pivotal in my journey. So I would tell him
Mashallah.
like at the moment I'm doing this. What do you advise? Do you advise me to do this? Do you advise me to study with this person? Or do you advise me to do X, Y, and Z? So my fiqh studies were, taken control by him. He would say, let's study this book next, let's study this book next. So we'd just be like, okay, whatever you say, we'll come
Mashallah.
and study with you. And then we take advice from other people likewise. So it was actually Dr. Salah who introduced me to, I think it was Sheikh Ali Hani,
Yeah.
is an Arabic,
Quran professor. Yeah.
yeah, who's amazing likewise. So he introduced me to Sheikh Ali Hani. He said, "Oh, there's such and such a person in the high where we used to live. You should go and study with him." So then I made contact with him. Then I met him in his house, and then we used to go and study at his house again in the mornings and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah. And then he got me in touch with a different teacher. So he
So it's
said,
just like a chain reaction.
yeah, so he's
Wow.
so different teachers, get you in contact. He told me about Sheikh Ahmad Al Hassanat, who
Yeah.
is the Mufti of Jordan right now. So
MashaAllah.
he then wasn't the Mufti of Jordan, so he had more time on his hands. So he phoned him and said, "Listen, there's a couple of students I want you to teach." So then he used to come to my house and teach me at my house. So he'd come home
Wow.
from work, he'd come to the house, and we did a few books, Aqid and Mantiq, and he'd go home. So I got to know
Wow.
him quite well as well.
Mm.
Like that, you get to know people, and you move on from teachers to other teachers, and over the 7 to 8 years there were multiple people that I met and multiple people that I studied with, but there were only a few that left, like a massive sort of
Yeah.
change in the way I saw Islam, the way I studied Islam, and sort of I'm still in contact with those people now.
MashaAllah. Yeah, Dr. Salai came, was it end of last year or was it start of early
Yeah,
this year?
about this time last year it was, yeah,
This
this
time
time.
last year, yeah. So,
I
mashallah,
couldn't
he's,
believe it when he came because I would never have imagined him
yeah,
in the UK. Just like,
wow,
I mean, if you
yeah,
be to like his house in Suela, in Amman, and you know him, and imagining him in the UK was just like, wow, like I can't believe
yeah,
he's here. But that was amazing. That was quite a massive
yeah,
life changing
mashallah.
as well.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, he was very, very good. I mean, he's like a machine, mashallah. He's just like
oh yeah, we were
just
chatting
does
after that.
not, yeah, it's
We did like a
amazing.
good month off after that one.
Yeah, it was very, very good, mashallah. Okay, excellent, excellent. That's lovely. I think it's so wonderful that you speak about how you had a teacher that eventually became a bit of a mentor. And
Yeah,
oftentimes I think people, maybe crave some of that. I think you sometimes maybe, especially if people go and study, maybe they do online courses and things, they may not have personal interaction with the person that they're studying with.
yeah,
And I suppose maybe that was the fruits of the struggle that you made, that initial effort to go abroad and study and leave everything, but then to connect to teachers at a personal level who then mentor you and train you and introduce you to
oh
other
yeah.
people. That's invaluable.
That is really important, and that's one of the pitfalls of just in this sort of age that we're living in, of just sort of like, signing up to a course, listening to pre-recorded lessons, and then just doing those and thinking, oh yeah, you've learned and you've got the information. I mean, there's a role for that, there's a use for
Mm,
that.
mm,
Sometimes certain things are taught like that, as long as there's some attachment to the person teaching that. But yet
yeah.
tarbiyah, which is like cultivation or having that mentorship, is
Mm,
pivotal because you as a student need to grow,
yeah.
and the teacher who allows you to grow, who's the one that tells you like, okay, we need to study this now, or looks at you and looks at your level or gives you the advice that you want,
Mm,
and he allows until you grow with your teacher, and your teacher also grows with you as a student. So your
yeah.
teacher's always learning as well. The teachers, they've not finished their learning.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important that you have that access to a teacher. I'm a firm believer in it. And a lot of the time when I do teach in person as well, I always mention that as well, that, look, student teacher relationship, you have durus which are public
Yeah.
lesson. And as you
Yeah.
teach, people come and go. It's not that important. They've learned. They've gone home. There's a small connection there with the teacher. But when you're studying Islam, there has to be a teacher-student relationship. There has to be, and that relationship is based on rights and responsibilities. Likewise, which the ulama speak about, like the rights and responsibilities of the teacher and what the teacher should do for the student, and how that responsibility and that connection should be governed. In the modern world, we're getting further and further away from that.
Mm, mm,
Now it's like studying online like this. Then it's like, okay, now let's just do pre-recorded lessons. Now it's
yeah.
just like, well, we don't even know who we're studying with. It's just whatever. So it goes against the Islamic sort of way of studying, I would say.
Mm.
So if you study enough and then your teacher says to you, Kalash, you're ready to go and, do your own reading, research, that's fine. But in the initial stages, you have to have what we call taslim. You must, give yourself up to someone and sort of take on, that person's methodology and learning because you trust him. Otherwise, you'd never have gone to him.
Yeah.
You think he's a pious person. He understands what he's talking about. He studied with Mashaykh, etc., etc. And class,
Hmm.
you leave your affairs with him for a few years until you've sort of grown and you understand your own self.
Mashallah. Okay, mashallah. I wanted to kind of speak a little bit about Hanafi fiqh in particular because I know that's something that you take a keen interest in, and obviously being
Yeah,
attached to Dr. Salah, who's obviously a master in this. I think fiqh, a lot of people they kind of reduce fiqh to just prayer and siyam and kind of use an inhaler when I'm fasting, or what happens if my nose bleeds in prayer, or just like miniature rulings that kind of this thing, okay, it's ibadat and that's it.
yeah.
um, but maybe fiqh is more vast than that. And I think, I guess a question really to ask you is kind of in the modern context in 2024, in this kind of fast-paced world that we're in, how important is fiqh for us?
Also, fiqh is really important. And as you've mentioned, look, there's two ways of understanding fiqh. Again, one is fiqh for the common, awam, general populace. They want to learn how to pray, how to fast, how to give zakat, and there's a certain way fiqh is taught to those people. They don't want to get into the nitty gritty. They don't want to learn the
Mm,
mutu. They don't care about that they've read Kuduri or they've read this book or that book. They just want to learn, is this allowed, is this not allowed? And there's a place for that. That's
mm,
like also important. You should always have certain gatherings where it's for the general public and you're teaching them the basics of it. They don't want to know the reasons behind it. They don't want to do disagreements with the other madhahib. And then there's the fiqh that is learned to become a faqih, to become a jurist or a scholar, or someone who looks deeply into the rulings. So in my understanding, the way I see it is like the two separate things. The common person, the common layman shouldn't be expected to learn fiqh to that level because that's not his speciality.
mm,
The person who dedicates himself to Islamic learning, who wants to take it more seriously, who wants to become a talib ilm, a student of knowledge, who wants to learn Islam, with a methodology, and increase his level slowly, slowly until he becomes a scholar in Islam, he must learn fiqh properly. Because what's happening right now is that you've got people who are engaging in the instrumental sciences, who are engaging in Aqidah or Falsafa or philosophy, mantiq, but the backbone of Islam is what we call the methodology of Islam is fiqh. Because
mm,
80% of your interactions in the world are things, as in things that you do, things that you
mm,
speak, people that you speak to, relationships that you have, problems that occur in the physical world. All of
mm,
those things are governed by what we call the principles laid in the books of the fuqaha, whether it's halal and haram, whether it's food and drink, whether it's ibadat, worship, whether it's financial transactions. There's nobody that doesn't deal with money, doesn't buy
mm.
and sell,
Yeah.
doesn't get married, or like if you become an adult, or doesn't have children, or doesn't eat food, or all these things. The rulings are there in the books of the fuqaha. So as a student of knowledge, the majority of questions that you will get are things that you will need fiqh for. They're
Mm,
not going to ask you about high level philosophical realities and the disputes of Razi with such and such a person or Ghazali's thought. That's an academic sort of discussion that the academics have, scholarly discussions. But if you're going to be an imam or a preacher or a scholar that you're teaching, the public, the majority of your questions are going to be fiqh related. They're going
yeah.
to ask you about Hayd and Nifas,
Mm,
menstruation, and
mm,
postnatal feeding. They're going to ask you about, the question I had the other day was there's a new type of I think it's eyelash or something. Oh no, no, the eyebrow. There's something that they do, and there's a new type of thing that they're using. And someone asked me, "Can you do wudu with it?" I've forgotten what it is exactly now. They use sort of something to sort of they don't pluck your hair out. They use your own hair to shape it or something like that. So these are the things that you got women who wear like the nail varnish, and
Yeah.
companies say the water is permeable, and is it so there's always new stuff happening, more and more. And in the modern world, every day there's a new thing. Can we do this? Can we do that? Is this allowed? Is that allowed? Is vaping allowed? Is that allowed? There's so many things.
Mm.
So the only thing that can govern all of these answers is fiqh, because fiqh is a methodology. It's
Mm.
something that you learn of how to answer
Mm.
without contradiction. So if I say this is allowed, then this has to be allowed and this has to be allowed, because there has to be a system that you're following, and the system has to be something that doesn't contradict itself. It has to be logical and non-contradictory. So fiqh is the only thing that allows you to do that. If I go directly to the Quran and Sunnah and say, oh well, there's a verse so I can't do this, it could be that in a different mas'ala or ruling you now contradict yourself, because based on that verse this would be impermissible, and based on that verse this would. So you get into the realm of what we call confusion.
Mm.
So the only way to come out of that confusion and disarray and chaos is to learn a methodology that takes you out from all of that. Tamam? It's
Mm.
like any other profession. If you do medicine and a patient comes to you and says, I suffer from X, Y, and Z symptom, and you say, okay, we need to do this test and this test and this test, and then we give you this drug, this drug, this drug. If you had another patient who came with different symptoms, you'd go through the same protocol. So
Mm.
everyone is treated in the same way. You don't want to be in a situation where every time you have someone coming to you, you're treating them in different ways. That wouldn't
Mm.
make sense. It'd be highly complicated and highly inefficient. And so the fuqaha developed ways to make the job of the faqih easy. They took everything that's in the Quran and Sunnah and they made it palatable. They made it easy to access, and they made masail that a faqih can look at, and then he can do what we call extrapolate or derive other rulings from that.
Yeah.
Your job as a student is to be able to get to that point.
Mm.
So fiqh is probably one of the most, yeah, as you said, people just think of its rulings, like, oh, learn this is halal, this is haram. But when you actually study it in the right way, you realize that it's much more than, just learning like halal, haram, yes, no, valid, invalid. No, I totally agree with you. No.
I think that's an interesting point you make about. I can definitely attest to it on a community level. Um, good couple of years ago, I was asked to give khutbahs at a masjid, and
Yeah,
how wasn't an imam there or anything, just started to give khutbahs there, and you find that people come to you, and they're asking all sorts of questions, and invariably everything that it boils down to fiqh.
yeah,
People ask questions about, marriage, the children,
definitely.
ibadat, food, drink, clothing. That this it's all kind of it's all fiqh related, and that's really at the community level. That's the normal people who are coming every day to the masjid and want guidance, subhanAllah.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, one other thing that I wanted to speak to you about. So, a lot of people think, okay, well, fine, fiqh, I want to go study and I want to kind of start. So, um, a lot of people kind of think, well, how do I go about doing this? Right? How do I go about studying and what should I do? So, what's your advice on kind of effectively studying, particularly the Hanafi madhab? How do you, because one thing is about, like you mentioned, about understanding the methodology, the usul, the principles, how you, derive rulings, but from the Quran, from the Sunnah. But that's one thing. Then there's another thing about understanding the rulings, and another thing about contextualizing, based upon the modern issues that we face. So, how do you look at all of that and then think, what's the best way to approach studying? Let's say I really want to take this seriously. What's your advice on kind of study? What's
the,
the methodology?
the easy answer. is find a good teacher. That's the easy answer. Because if
Yeah.
you find a good teacher, they look after all of that for you. So that's the easy
Mm,
answer. But if you can't find, a good teacher and you want to do it yourself and you want to study, sort of sort the whole thing out yourself, then the way is to find someone that can teach you um, the mutun. So traditionally, there's always been a way of studying fiqh or any knowledge, all the
mm,
sciences. This can apply to all of the sciences in general. There's been a pathway of studying those sciences. And so the ulama,
mm,
like anything in life, said, start with something that's simple, move to something that's intermediate, and then move to something that is advanced. And they would perfect each stage and then add and repeat, add and repeat. So the mutun are the information in the mutun. What we mean by the mutun are like the sort of the manuals written in that science. So the Hanafi fiqh has manuals or mutun, Arabic language, Nahu Sarf, they have manuals written. And these like textbooks, classical textbooks that we may consider like, we have textbooks now. These are like their sort of textbooks that they would read to master that fun or discipline or that art. So in fiqh, we have that. So you want to be able to master the science through the classical manuals, tamam? Because that's the way it's been done from the beginning. So if
mm,
you now come and give a different way, you're not going to get to the outcome that you desire. So the ulama say, well, if you want to master, you must study these mutun in order. So you must start with something that's simple, and the teacher explains it to you, you understand it, and you may not look at it in that much detail or depth, and then you may add another book after that, look at it in a bit more detail, repeat a lot of the masail that you've done before. So a lot of the
yeah.
time students, they want something new, they want to move on quickly, they want to study the sort of advanced books, but that's not how it
Yeah.
works. You've got
Yeah.
to master the foundations very well. And so what the mutun will do is they will repeat everything again. So if you study to like a book in basic book in Hanafi, and then you study everything you study in the basic book will be repeated again. So you're studying
Mm,
all again, and then you're adding something more. Then you study an advanced book, everything in the intermediate text is repeated again, and you're adding a bit more what I call masala, a bit more spice onto it.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
each level you're repeating and adding, repeating and adding, and each level you're building a bit more understanding. So if you stop at the first level and you think, oh yeah, I've got it now, I've learned salah, I've learned tahara, it's because you haven't got to the intermediate level, because you don't realize
Mm,
the discussions that are had at the intermediate level. When you
mm-hmm.
get to the intermediate level, you think, oh yeah, you've made it, because you don't understand discussions that are being had at the advanced level. So if anyone now wants to study Hanafi fiqh or any other sciences, the first thing is to find a good teacher. That's
Mm-hmm.
the first thing. If you find a good teacher that's willing to give you time and that's willing to take you through the mutun, then alhamdulillah, you should be very happy that you found someone, because it's not easy to find someone in this day and age,
Yeah.
because the teachers, they don't, either they're very busy or they are working or they've got other commitments and they're only teaching once a week. So a lot of the, they may teach a thing here and there, but they're not really taking students from like, beginning till the
Mm,
end. And a lot of, if you're studying full time, that's different. If you go to like a full time madrasa somewhere, obviously that's different. But for people like yourself and other people who have jobs, families, and they want to do it part time, then it's all about finding a teacher and then persevering with that teacher as well.
mm,
Perseverance is massive, because you can't learn ilm overnight.
mm,
It will take you a long time to master, science. If you're going to go down the whole scholarly route or the Islamic studies route, but people want like a quick fix, they want like a
yeah. Yeah.
course on this and move on, but it's just not taught like that. And it's it's a lot of perseverance and a lot of like, toing and froing with the teacher, asking questions, reading, doing your own research, doing your own work, reading around, listening to other shuyukh, and over time you'll start developing within yourself this understanding. As I said, your learning will never stop. but you need that first teacher to ignite in you how to study. So they
Yeah.
teach you the terminology of that science. They'll teach you how the scholars think, the words, the terminology that they use. For example, in the Hanafi madhab, if you read a work and it says jaiz, which means permissible.
Permissible.
Yeah, so you know Arabic, so you read it and it says khiyaru sharti jaizun. It says the option to cancel a contract is permissible. And you think, yeah, I've understood it. But you don't realize that jaiz here, the word permissible here in the terminology of the fuqaha is in general it means that this is a legal exception to the norm, what we call istihsan. So when he says jaiz, is because it shouldn't be allowed, but it is.
Yeah.
The qiyas, the legal norm, is that this should not be allowed because it goes against what we call the necessities of a contract. That once I sell and I buy something and the contract's enacted, that the ownership should come to me immediately. They should. But what's the reason for the delay? So if I stipulate a delay and say no, I want the option to cancel the contract in 3 days, even though we bought and sell. So you read that and you think, yeah, I understood it. So if you read it on your own, you'd be like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah, option. But you understood what we call the terminology of the science that you're reading. And Nahu and Sarf has its own terminology. The
Yeah.
mantiq and philosophy and Aqidah has its own terminology. And so
Yeah.
the teacher is all about being a key. He gives you the keys to understand that fun. That's why one of the shuyukh, Sheikh Abdul Malik al-Sa'di, who's one of the major mashayikh from Iraq, who is in Jordan, he would say, Al-Ibarat, he said this to me in person, he said, Al-Ibarat mughlaqa. He says that the sentences and the statements in a book are mughlaqa, mean locked. And you need a teacher to be able to open them, understand them. So the mutun, and there's a whole discussion that whether mutun deliberately written in a manner that a student couldn't understand on his own, to stop wrong people or people who don't have the they're not worthy of becoming ulama, to stop them from saying, oh, we've become ulama. So only the best couldn't to say, oh yeah, we become ulama. So there's a whole discussion whether it's written like this on purpose or not. But in general, yeah. So once you've understood how to do that, then you can get into the next stage, which is you can start doing a lot of your own reading because you've been given that sort of the skills, the tools to be able to navigate yourself in that science. But obviously, you always have problems, and at that point, you might come back to your teacher and say, "Oh, I've got a question. I don't understand this." But in general, you get it. So that's how So if you were to ask me anyone in the West who wants to study Islam, I was to find a good teacher and persevere with that teacher and go through a classical curriculum. So go through like the basic, beginners, mutun, intermediate, and then advanced.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Maghrib is coming in, or has come in already. So I just want to find out one or two questions. By the way, mashallah, we've got just someone commented here. You'll like this one. So Omar Khan, he was 2 years below you in Liverpool Uni.
Oh
He
yeah.
says, currently messaging you from Medina after Hajj. MashaAllah, Allah accept
Oh,
your Hajj. MashaAllah,
mashallah.
very proud of you, brother. May Allah bless you for all your hard work and reward your parents. MashaAllah.
Is this
That's
Omar
lovely.
that was in your year?
No,
Is
he's
that
2 years below you, I think. Tall Omar,
tall
MashaAllah.
guy? Yeah, 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 tall guy.
Yeah,
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 from
yeah.
Walsall.
Warsaw, yeah, just down the
Yeah,
road
yeah.
from me.
Give my
MashaAllah, bless
salam
him.
and send my
MashaAllah,
salam.
MashaAllah. Lovely, yeah. So he's tuning in from Medina, MashaAllah.
Oh,
Alhamdulillah. So
well,
finally, Sheikh, as we know, you are starting a course, inshallah, next week, going through a text, Tuhfatul Muluk. Tell us
yeah.
a little bit about this text, its position in the madhab, and why you're teaching it.
So Tuft al-Muluk is in the Hanafi madhab. It's one of the sort of beginner manuals in the madhab. So as we've just mentioned, there are mutun, there are manuals that you study. And so in the Hanafi madhab, we have beginner legal manuals. And Tuhfat al-Muluk is a beginner level manual. And there are a lot of people who want to study Hanafi fiqh, so I just decided that to open it up, because I teach in person in Bolton, but to open it up to everyone in the world and to sort of make the benefit a bit more widespread, I just decided to do an online class in that. And Dawf al is special because it was one of the first books that I studied when I was abroad, and it includes 10 chapters. So it has the first 5 chapters on ibadat, namely purity, prayer, salah, zakat, hajj, saum. It has those 5 chapters that are normally studied in a beginner's text, and then it has 5 other chapters which beginners text normally don't include, which is like the chapter on jihad, the chapter on ritual slaughter and sacrifice, the chapter on halal and haram, inheritance, and etiquettes and good manners. So it's a
Mm.
quite comprehensive beginner's text. So someone who studies that gets a good overview of the madhab, and they get to also not just study the ibadat, but they also get to have a bit of an overview of some of the other chapters which are not normally studied at a beginner's level. Because if you don't study anything else after this, you might not get access to some of those
Mm.
chapters, and because you'll have to study a longer text to get to those chapters. So here you get to access some of those chapters and get an overview of them in a shorter text, which is alhamdulillah good. Now,
Okay, mashallah. So that's starting next Sunday, isn't it?
yeah, so
Uh,
next Sunday, what is it, 31st or Sunday the 30th? Or,
30th, I
yeah,
think.
the last Sunday of June, inshallah. It's going to
Yeah,
be an hour, just 1 hour a week, over about 36 hours, so 36 weeks. Inshallah, we'll try and finish the text.
inshallah.
Um, yeah, I think the sign up is on my Facebook page and the
Okay,
institute
inshallah.
page and things like that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's a good opportunity. Inshallah, I'm looking forward to teaching people from around the world. It's a learning opportunity for myself as well. Every time you teach, people ask new questions. You get to see how they think, and it's something that I'm also teaching on the ground right now. And alhamdulillah, each student will get the a translated text. So with the Arabic and the English, because I've translated Duft al Muluk, it's something I've been working
Okay,
on. So they'll
right.
get the translated text and some of my own commentary in the footnotes. So we're literally studying that, understanding the text and moving on. And it's all there, it's all in English. I've made it as easy as possible for as a beginner's text, alhamdulillah. I've worked on it for a long time. So it's the first time that I'm opening it up to everyone, around the world to sort of access the text and for me to teach it for the first time online. So yeah, alhamdulillah, I'm looking forward to it.
Inshallah. Um, I just want to finish off, Sheikh, kind of just really asking you about your kind of maybe long-term goals and objectives. You've spent, mashallah, dedicated quite a large portion of your time going abroad, studying, acquiring all of these skills and knowledge, mashallah. You're now back in Bolton, alhamdulillah, obviously set up Said Institute, which is doing some great work in Bolton. What are your kind of long-term goals in terms of teaching and what do you envisage for the future?
I don't know. That's a difficult question. I mean, there are visions, and then there's that on the ground. You have all these dreams, and then
Yeah.
you try and do the work, and they all go down the drain. But I mean, if I had a vision, it would be to, spread and disseminate classical ilm and knowledge as far and wide as possible. And create the next generation of tullab ilm, students of knowledge, and create this passion for learning up and down the country, and the create, because they're the ones that are going to take this message on to the next generation.
Mm,
We have responsibility, and we're trying to pass it on to the next generation, and so they continue the work. And you can only do that in 2 ways, which is the mission statement of the institute as well, which is to create intellectual spaces and spiritual spaces, which is
mm,
that you need to create an atmosphere where ilm thrives, both in academic way and both in a spiritual way, meaning the ilm is practiced and the ilm is taught. So
mm,
the whole vision of everything that we're trying to do is that we're trying to teach ilm in the best of ways, So everything that we do, we try and do with itqan, we try and teach accuracy, detail. We spend a lot of time making sure things are taught properly, and inshallah they are. And we also try to create spaces which make the practice of ilm easy. That, you know, whether that's through majalis, whether that's through events, lectures, whether that's through community spirit, that we're trying to create an atmosphere up and down the country. Because, yeah, we're based in Bolton, but our mission is national. You know, we've got Sheikh Ismail coming soon, the Sheikh Ismail Hafizullah from Jordan, and we're going to be going up and down the country with him. So we're trying to spread this light as far and wide as possible. And what I enjoy personally is meeting people, speaking to people, learning off people, seeing different communities, and engaging with them and creating friendships and brotherhood and ukhuwah and all these things that the Prophet ﷺ talked about. We feel this unity. You know, we're not so stuck in this one little community in our own town. No, we might be here, but we feel our brothers and sisters up and down the UK, and we're all headed with the support of ilm and knowledge. So we're teaching the classical sciences, and we're engaged in it, and we're learning it, and we're also practicing our ilm and our suluk and our tasawwuf, and we're having our Islam in our day-to-day lives. So so it would be to create spaces that can do things, that can do those two things. That we create spaces for knowledge and spaces where that knowledge can be practiced spiritually. So I mean, inshallah, Allah make things easy and give us tawfiq. But yeah, those are the sort of things in my head right now where I'm trying to get to now.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we've been going on for an hour. I think it's time to kind of wrap things up. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so
That's
much for
now.
your time. And thank everybody for listening and being part of it. Alhamdulillah. So, as the Sheikh mentioned, we've got Tuhfatul Muluk, which is obviously starting next Sunday, inshallah. You can join and sign up, show your interest. There's a link which is tinyurl.com. I'll try and put it on here.
Yep.
tinyurl.com/tuhfa. So that should show up on here. Yeah, tinyurl.com/tuhfa. So you can go onto here. You can basically sign up, share, express your interest to join. It's an excellent opportunity, as the chef mentioned. It's important to attach to good scholars, and I can personally attest to, mashallah, the excellence of Shaykh Siddiq. Mashallah, he's come to Wolverhampton on several occasions and really benefited our community, mashallah. And so it's an excellent opportunity to kind of get into the busyness of studying sacred knowledge and in particular fiqh as well. So, Jazakumullah khairan everybody for listening, and inshallah we'll have another wonderful conversation soon, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam.